Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fifth episode of 30 Minutes with SyRan. In this episode, we are looking at our track For You. We're going to be focusing on the drums and the basses.
Yeah, so last episode we looked at the intro and looked at everything that went around the bass and the drums. But today we will be focusing on the main parts. That is the gritty drums and the gritty bass.
Right. We've got 30 minutes. We're going to keep it. I mean, the last episode we ended up going about 50 minutes because we focused on pianos and all the synth parts. So if you haven't caught up with that yet, I would go back, watch that episode first if you want, and then this one. Or it doesn't matter really. If you want to watch the drums and the bass first and then go on the synths, it's up to you. But let's get straight to it. What we're going to do is, I'm not going to play the whole track. Because you can listen, stream, download via RAM, so on Spotify, etc. I'm sure that they'll put a link in the description. So let's get straight into the drums. There we go, that's some of the drums. Don't worry about this mixer channel. Basically, everything in dark blue is our drums. So, lots going on. Not a lot going on, really. First thing I noticed is we've only got 9 channels of audio. 9 mixer channels.
And that, for us, is not a lot.
It isn't really. I think we like to streamline a lot of our sounds and actually route them to the same mixer channels. That's one thing that FL Studio can do quite nicely, and I think it just, for us, from my point of view, when I'm mixing, it's a lot difficult to mix when you've got loads of faders. So keeping it streamlined to sort of on an 8 or 10 makes it a lot easier. And when we write music, we always have this sort of old school mentality of having limitations, which can help sort of drive creative decisions, and just it can stop. Sometimes you can put too much in and tracks can get a bit too busy. So yeah, it's something that we do. So
yeah, there's no point throwing the kitchen sink at it. Just keep it short and sweet.
Exactly. Right, let's get into the drums then. So how am I going to do this? What I'm going to do is I'm going to solo each part and then see what we've got going on. So I've not set this up right, have I, James?
You haven't, no, but we can work through it. It's fine.
Yeah, all right. So let's do this break here. So we've got sort of like a think break going on here. Not much going on. We're on off the low end. This would have been used, so all these MIDI. Here we go. So what we do is we like to slice up the breaks to MIDI, which allows us to do a lot easier drum edits. Sometimes when you're dealing with audio and you're cutting up the audio, it can be really sort of takes a long time and can be a bit fiddly. Whereas we like to just sort of drag the break into the sampler, and it will slice it up into different sections, and then we can just sort of play each part like that.
And as you can see, sometimes we took the second snare of that drum loop that time, but in some cases we may still take the first snare of the drum loop, or still have the mixture of the two. But you'll find that, I mean, this particular think break, sort of an old, it's 160 BPM, or I think it came from like an old school sample CD or something. And you'll find that you'll listen to it and you can notice a subtle difference in the snare on the first and the second one. So sometimes it's nice just to play about with the snares to find which one sits better in the mix. And in this case, we took the second snare and rolled with that one rather than the first.
Yeah, so in this sampler, you've got a couple of sliders, and what we've actually done is we've pitched it down one semitone, and we've used the transient time stretching algorithm. In the time stretch, you've got different algorithms. Some are better designed for others. We normally just sort of try them all and see which sounds best. And then what we've done as well is we using the built-in filters. So we're rolling off all the low end rumble, what we don't need on the break. So then after that, so there's the first EQ. So we're taking out some of the harshness on the tambourines, taking out this sort of the boomy reverb off the kick drum. And then we're going into a stereo enhancer, which is essentially just collapsing the break to mono. And then a little bit of reverb on that. And then after that, we've got a filter, which is done by this automation clip. So we use it for the fills and the build-ups. And what we've done is we use this automation clip here is just essentially an on-off switch for the filter. Because for some quirky reason, when you have filters on, even though that they may be fully open, they're still affecting the break. And sometimes you can be actually impacting the real top end frequencies, especially when you've got a little bit of resonance. So that can cause sort of mix issues. So we like to only activate the filter when it's being used. Second part to this sort of layer is another break here. It's like a funky drummer break edit, which is quite cool.
Very gritty as well. So just a mixture of then the think break and then a sort of a gritty break as the first layer that we've used.
So what we've done is because it's a slow break, we've used the pitch dial to speed up each sample. I think I went over this in a previous episode, but we haven't got time to sort of go into great detail on what this does. But we use it as a technique for reducing or increasing the amount of groove or swing between the hits.
Yeah, so just very quickly, one of the things that I love to do, and this is just a personal preference, is that sometimes I've put in hip-hop breaks as a drum and bass break, which are sort of only 100 beats per minute. And before I really start editing it, what I love to do with the pitch is try and find what the actual pitch would be normally if it did speed up to 174 beats or 175 beats per minute, of how many semitones it will need to go up, where basically it would naturally play at 174 and what the natural pitch would be. Of course, I know you've got technology at the times where you can still keep the pitch at its normal base at 100 beats per minute, but of course sped up breaks tend to sound better when they're pitched up.
Yeah, because they're not actually time stretching. You're treating it as though it's a sampler. So if you get a bass sound and you put it in a sampler, when you play lower hits, the sound will be played slower, and vice versa. You pitch it up, sound plays quicker, and you can use that with drum breaks. So if you've got a slow break, 100 BPM, there's more. You'll find that because there's more space between each bar, you've got a lot of swing, groove. But if you try and speed that up to 174, it will sound like it's too slow and sort of jumping a bit. So what you do is you then pitch up the sample in the sampler, and then you're keeping all that groove, and it'll translate well to the higher tempos because of it's been pitched up. Yeah, that does sound in my head. That sounds right. That's probably I think I will as an idea for a future video, I think I will go into this more.
Yeah, but I guess as a quick 5-second take, try and put it in a sampler and see how it will naturally sound at 174 beats per minute before then you start tweaking it. At that later point, you can start, pitching it up and down or doing whatever. But as my first port of call, I love to see what it naturally sounds like at 174 beats per minute if you're taking a break that's 100 beats per minute, 120, 140.
Yeah. Right, next section, amens, because no SyRan tune is complete without an amen break. A lot of people have said, guys, have you actually wrote a tune yet without an amen break? And we say, no, they're always in. It's like the magic layer. Makes every tune better, in my opinion.
Did Paradigm have an amen break?
Yeah, on drum fills.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, actually, we need to go through the processing on this funky drummer break quickly. Sorry. I am getting ahead of myself here. So we've rolled out all the low ends, taken some of the harshness on the snare. 4 to 6K area with breaks can be problematic. So just take some of the harshness. And then we've got an SSL channel strip. It's just boosting the tops. So what we're doing is we're getting a bit of air and then taking out some mids on it. Yeah, it's just doing some colour EQing on that one. And then...
essentially, if you don't have an SSL compressor, then effectively what you can use instead is a multi-band...
It's just an analog channel strip. That's all it is, just to get some character to it. Yep. And then the filter, which will be linked to this automation clip here. Right. Aim and break. Let's go. He says. I do this every single time, don't I? I love that. It's a really good sound. Really good. So what we've got is this aiming channel consists of 2 layers. So we've got the original aim and break here. And then we've got another layer, which is the Trayman.
Just providing that tops, the rides, just a bit of weight on the tops, and without it sounds quite thin. But with it, you got a bit of weight underneath it.
Yeah, definitely. And because the aim and break is the main part of the drum sound, it needs to sound big. Otherwise, you take it out and you lose the energy. And the aim and break for me is a very energetic break because of the tops. So it's good to just have it as at the front of the mix. But you find that if you need to reinforce it with other sounds, you can do that. I've done it before where actually you take 2 aim and breaks, but they're different edits, and you sort of merge them together to make this unique aim and break.
The super amen.
It's a super amen. Imagine that. You've got like 4 or 5 layered amens, and it's just like a choir of amen breaks.
Oh, don't say that. You'll be giving us ideas for next tunes.
Yeah.
just like 5 amen breaks all just layered together.
Yeah. But anyways, right. Anyway, so back to this first amen. So let's go through the processing. Again, what we've done is we've sliced it, done our own edits, and you can see as we've cut up the patterns as well. So to keep the track interesting, we wanted sort of nice little edits.
Yeah, as you heard throughout the sort of the replay of it, there was like stuttering or like re-triggers, which are quite quick, which you can hear in the background of the main tune as well. It just keeps it different, keeps it interesting, rather than just the same sort of kick, snare, snare, kick, snare, snare. That there's variation in the mix.
Yeah. EQ then on the amen. Bringing up the snaring, taking out some of the, rolling off some of the high end, because we know that we've got the Trayman underneath, which was providing that. So we didn't want it clashing. We've then got this swept. It's essentially a channel strip, and the only thing I'm using it for is saturation module. Just driving it a little bit more. You can hear you get a bit more oomph to it as well, and there's some filters.
Yeah. Especially take note of the highs on that before and after.
Yep. Then we've got our master filter again. And then we've got another EQ, which would have been resonating frequencies. The Amon's one of them. It's got ring. The snare is characteristic, but there's you've got 2 or 3 fundamental ringing, and after a while they can just sometimes poke out too much once you've saturated or compressed. So that's all I've done here, is just sort of cleaned up the break a little bit. And then we've got an FL balance, which would be that will be used for side chaining off the kick drum.
Yeah, and we've covered the how we sidechain in previous episodes. So, to be honest, I think for the very first episode of the Paradigm, going through the Paradigm drums, we talked about the balance of how we do the sidechain there.
Right. Next is the Trayman. Again, just using it for the rides. A compressor which actually isn't doing anything, so this is an old plug-in delay compensation trick that we've done. For some reason, when this compressor is on, it introduced a small amount of latency, like a tiny amount, which can make a difference for some reason for polarity. So it was something that we just sort of get used to. And yeah, a little quirky trick that we use. And then again, another filter, just the bog standard filter, which would be used for, throughout the track, especially sort of near the end, at the end of the track. That's what we've used it for on the fade out. So
I think that's all the breaks.
That's all the breaks. So let's play them all together. He says.
It in the...
Yeah, I have. So yeah, so a thing to note is we've used 1, 2, 3, 4 layers. 4, that is all. And I'm surprised by that, but it just goes to show that sometimes you don't need layers and layers and layers. You keep it simple, and it gives room for everything to cut through.
Yeah, that's it, to be honest. Yeah, I'm sure you'll hear us explain how we've used like 15 drums, but sometimes some tunes it works. Some tunes you just need 4.
Yeah, exactly. Right, kick and clap. Let's go. To be honest, that kick drum on its own sounds a bit crap. It does.
Yeah.
It's not the world's best kick drum, but the thing is you've got the aim and break mids. So this is sort of a layer which is reinforcing it.
As you can hear with the clap as well, briefly, is that it's not meant to be this really punchy snare at like 200 hertz or anything like that. The clap and the kick are more complements. I guess the kick more is introducing the thumpiness of the normal sort of 60, 80, 110 sort of hertz areas that you expect from the kick. But a lot of whilst we have rolled off a lot of the lows of the other breaks, is that we've still kept the mids of like kicks on like the aim and break as such, so that when the kick and then the aim and break kick as well go together to complement each other, that's what gives it a bit more weight. So yeah, on its own it does sound a bit crap, but that's probably a pretty weird statement to say from us, that on its own it sounds crap. It's not that we intentionally want to make crap sounds. It's just that in the context, sometimes when you're writing tunes, especially in drums, is that the samples on their own may sound amazing,
but when you put them all together, it doesn't work. And then vice versa. There's times where actually on their own, the kick may not be the world's most punchiest kick, or there's parts of it that aren't perfect. But when you put them all together in the context of a drum kit, they sound good. And in this case, it worked for what we wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, and
that's,
I guess at the end,
it's so subjective, isn't it?
Yeah.
When writing, it's subjective. We may think the kick drum is a bit naff. Someone else may think, oh, it's amazing. It's one of them things. Writing music is so subjective. So not everything that we say is gospel, and
not every track that we make is brilliant, wow, amazing either. Of course, we
love
everything that we release. We love. We will not release a track we don't like, and more often than not, tracks like this, maybe I can't remember actually, but we'll go through revisions, variations. I'm sure this is like version
5 or 6.
Yeah, because we've not liked it from the very first draft that we've done, and we've taken time out to go back to it and tweak it to the point where we like it. And to be honest, you could always be doing that, because naturally, through experience, you're always getting better with your music production. So you can always go back to a track that you've done previously and always slightly tweak it just to make it a bit better. But there gets to a cut-off point where you've got to sit down and go, I love this as it is.
Yeah,
I think this is good enough.
Yeah, exactly. And this tune, I think, is probably 2 and a bit years old. So compared to what we're writing today, I guess we may do things a little bit different. But yeah, anyways, we've talked about that. The kick drum is good in context of the track on its own, and maybe in a more stripped out track, probably wouldn't use this sample. And the kick drum is off a previous break that it's called NYE break. So this would have been a New Year's Eve, probably alcohol infused sound design session, and we've made a break beat or a drum sound that we've not used in a track, and this went in. So what we've done in this is put it straight into the sampler. We've shortened the tail because we don't want it too long, and we've flipped the polarity and then flipped it back, which seems counterintuitive, but hey ho. And processing wise, we have got, again, just taking out some of the boxy low mids, rolling off all the sub because we don't need that. This area will be where the bass line hits. Giving it some more mids in the 1K just to poke out a little bit. Compressor trick again, and then another EQ, which again is a little bit, doing a little bit more here. Giving a bit more punch.
This is probably one of the when we've come back to the track, because normally we don't like undoing EQs we've done previously, which is why then we'd make another EQ.
Yeah,
under
so
it,
a little bit in series.
Yeah, so you may think, you may sit there and think, well, hang on, guys, you've got one EQ doing one thing, and then you've got another EQ literally underneath it doing something else. Why can't you just stick all that in one EQ and just save EQs? But this sort of, I think this is sort of a story of what the very first one was probably the first variation that we did, and then when we've come back and done a revision at a later date and we've forgotten really about the fundamentals of exactly how we did everything, that we'd go, right, we think the kick needs these tweaks, we'd make another EQ and then do those tweaks. That's probably likely what's happened.
You're only limited to 8 bands. We haven't got the Fab Filter ones where you can do all sorts of funky shapes. So sometimes it's easier just to split it a little bit across multiple ones. So that's the EQs. Filter, which would have been this clip here. So for the build up. And then we've got our friend Camel Fat, which will be just doing... It's doing parallel actually. So what we've done is we've probably slammed it hard. Bit of tube distortion and then just blended it back into the kick drum. And then, yeah, an FL balance, which I don't actually know what that would be doing. Oh, yes, I know what that's doing. So, top tip, and I know we're going to be going over 30 minutes. I've just seen the time. I don't care. I don't care, because this is important. This is important. This is a good little nugget of information on build-ups. When you opening up a filter and you've got high resonance, sometimes it can be too much and have way too much peak as the filter opens up. So a good way of doing that is to combine it with automation on the level of the sound, so that it starts low, and as the filter comes up, so does the volume. You have a more smoother transition, and you'll find for peak control, you haven't got things jumping out as you've got this harsh filter kicking in on the mids.
Yeah, and I'm not too sure. I don't think the kick volume minimum is 0%. I think we've probably set it to something like 50% or something like that. So I know you're probably looking at it going, oh, it's set to the lowest point, which is not. It doesn't necessarily mean 0 for us. We've most likely set it to something like 50%.
Sure, we've covered that in another video.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, that's a little trick, and you can do it on anything for filters. So if you're doing harsh filters for transition parts, drums, build-ups, use volume automation as well to sort of combat the peak increase when you get the filter resonance really sort of boost up in the mids. So essentially, they're sort of automatically leveling. If you think about it, as the filter gets louder, the volume can jump down. It's a way of making it sort of smoother, I guess. And what we did is we would have done that on the kick, and I think, yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. James. And then yeah, final thing, peak controller, which is triggering for sidechain. Clap. Right. So the clap is 3 layers. So what we've done is we've reused the clap from Scene Savage. Oh, that's literally it. I thought these were claps, but they're not. They're part of the kick drum. So yeah, we reused the clap from Scene Savage. We like it. Reuse it. Helps keep the signature sound. And I'm sure I've talked about reusing drum parts in previous episodes. So
yeah, again, another reason why we do the sound design sessions as well. It's basically your own pool of samples that that work and can fit into your sounds very well.
Yep. I'll quickly go through the 4x4 section, because I think going back to this kick drum is probably why we went for it. Because on the second drop, we have a little 4x4 section. Right, let's do this. So going back to, I know we're going back a little bit to go forward, but I think that's probably one of the choices that we made for the kick drum, is to not have it too punchy, because for this 4x4 section, there's a lot going on, and you've got when we get to the basses, that you're going to have the basses going as well. So we didn't want this huge kick drum, but we wanted it enough so it's giving punch and weight in the low end. I think the final thing on the drums is just some intro bits and classic reverse crash thing. So we've got just some opening hi-hats. These will be on their own channel. Taking out all the low end. Parallel processing on reverb and delay. And then another plate reverb. Do like this. Do like the Sound Toys stuff. Very good. And then another delay, which will be triggered on this second breakdown. And I believe, and it starts delayed, and then it's sort of the delay amount slowly reduces as it opens in. This, again, little things like that help create variation and flow and structure to the track. And I think Oh, there's a fill break in here. Which, let's go. Again, it's just a little drum fill. Just taking out scooping out, I guess, some of the room resonance from the reverb.
Yeah, if you go back to the track, this will all be as part of the mix there'd be a few other sounds as well. I mean, we'd use sweeps as well, and there'll be other sort of probably synth sounds that are included in that as well. So yeah, if you say break it down piece by piece, you may go, oh wow, that, not the best sounding thing ever, but it all complements each other as you then put it in the mix.
Yep, and then again some creative distortion effects, and reverb delay. And that's all the drums. And we've gone 30 minutes already, so let's go into basses. It's going to be another long episode here, James. People love it. We're not going to... I don't think we're going to have time to go through everything piece by piece. Yeah. So we'll rattle through these basses. The first thing I will do is talk about routing on this, because I think this is an important thing. So what we've got in this track is he says, we've got lots of different bass hits all on their own. There's a lot of independent faders. So what I like to do is create submixes or buses, and then split these buses into different types of bass. So you get all of one sort of bass in a bus, another sort of type of bass if it's more subby basses in a second bus, and then the third, and then a third for another one. And it just helps because it means that you're taking, instead of trying to mix off 20 faders, you're mixing off 3, and it allows you to do sort of bus processing to just glue everything together. So it's something that I would recommend to do, and it just helps make it a bit easier when you've got tracks like this where you've got lots of little basses all playing off each other. If you can get them all bussed into sort of on a fader, then it makes it a little bit easier when you come to the mixing stage. So this is just all the basses. I'm just quickly flicking through all the different parts.
Yeah, so sort of looking at the 3 that you've got, let's say you got the deep bass sounds, you've got then that
The horns,
horn
fog
sounds,
whatever you want to call
and
them.
then the other sort of Reese style
The
basses,
rollout section.
The rollout section.
Yeah, so the horns would have been off a couple of years ago. I did a sound design session where I made loads of big distorted basses. I essentially was like, right, how do I make a foghorn? I'm going to have a go, and I made about 15 different versions and kept them in a sample pack. And some of these eventually got in to the track. So it's good to always have separate sound design sessions so you can make samples ready to go. And I think when making them, I couldn't tell you I can't remember exactly, but it would have been a basic oscillator synth and just EQ'd and lots of duplicates of distortion resampling to create the big sound and the upper harmonics. A lot of these basses, so we've got a couple of massive hits, and a lot of these will be just samples. What we've done is we've got samples, one-shot hits, and then processed them even more to make the sort of our own style on them. So if I do... So this is SyRan, and what we've done, I'll quickly go through the processing chain. So we've got EQ, bringing up the upper harmonics, preamp, which is adding sort of more distortion, a little bit of reverb, another distortion, some more EQ, bringing up the mids, and then some delay, which is triggered so that once the note finishes, the delay kicks in and it just sort of smoothens out the sound. So again, here, EQ and just a series of distortions to create the upper harmonics. Different types of distortion, so it's something you can play with, valve distortion, tube distortions. There's loads of different plugins out there, and it's always good to try and different types to see what sounds best. Then we've got the sub on that. Again, a simple sort of distorted, squared off, no EQ, and it's just distorted. That's all I can say on that one, James, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly. We like to process the sub and then the upper EQ sections separately, just so that we've got a bit more control on the sound. I know that sort of putting layers and layers of distortion on the sub part can wreak havoc. So we tend to, first thing we do is roll off any lows, and then we proceed on doing the distortion, and then separately we'll then tweak and do our own sub bass, and then that then fits in together as part of those three layers that we have. Is that you'd have the horn sample on one mixer channel, and then the sub bass on the other mixer channel.
Yep. Conscious of time because we've overrun, so I don't want to go into drill down to too much detail. But as you can see, there's lots of different bass hits that we've got, and we've got lots of sort of the wobbly sub basses, which will all be different. You make 4 or 5 different versions of a similar bass sound, and then you can flick between them all to create variation.
Yeah, and if there's a particular bass sound that you want us to cover, then leave a comment below or get in touch with us on socials, Instagram, Twitter, at SyRan DMB, and just say if there's do a timestamp on the YouTube video or or on the track itself, and just go, hey, I'm interested in this particular bass sound. How did you make it? Or if you just want to ask a question, or it doesn't even have to be, I guess, this particular track. You just be general questions as well. In future episodes, we will drill down to a more detailed sound design session. I think for these, we're starting with just sort of track overviews, track breakdowns. Yeah, and in particular, we've picked tracks which have been a different process to each other. For example, there've been times where, say, we have got tracks that have got, like, just taking the drums, for example, 20 drums. Yeah. This track was only 4. So we wanted to give you almost like the yin and the yang of how we work. Some tracks of, for you, very melodic starts, and then there's other tracks that aren't. Which is more about the really big basses. So we're just trying to give you almost like an overview for the first few episodes of going, this is how we do things. Yeah, exactly. And this is how we create. Every track is different. Every track is different. We always go in. We don't have any fixed templates. We sort of start from a blank piece of paper every time and just see what happens. And I think as producers, it's a good way to, whilst retaining your sound, try different things and see what works. And then you'll find naturally over time, you may end up through force of habit writing in a certain style or a certain way. Yep. So please do get in touch with us if there's a particular thing that you want us to cover, one of the tracks that we've done that we've not yet mentioned, or we've only skimmed over because more likely than not we've run out of time on one of these episodes. So please do get in touch, and we will incorporate that into a future episode. Yeah, definitely. So for the last thing I want to quickly go over before we sign out for this episode is just this resound. We use these a lot, and I'll quickly show you that we like to use Trash 2, and then we've got mid-side EQ, so that will be taking out all the, well, in this case, what we've got, if I bring that in, we are actually boosting the sides, but taking out all the low end, so we want a little bit of width.
And then we've got some more EQs. Again, they're just doing little increments, upper harmonics, just to get the sub part to kick through. And then heavy limiting at the end, just to sort of flatten it in the mix. And then kick and snare side chaining. So yeah, try it with Reese's, try distorting, trash, EQ, and just keep it simple. And yeah, I think apologies for the lack of detail on the basses, because we always get transfixed by drums, but in the future episodes, if there's any particular sound that you want us to drill in, we can do a whole episode just dedicated to that sound or few sounds. So yeah,
and we love talking about the tracks that we do as well. As you can see, I think about 20 to 25 minutes of this was literally just covering the 4 layers of drums,
exactly,
or just overview processes dotted about in between. But so we love to hear from you.
We could talk for hours. So yeah, we'd like to hear from you.
So if there is something in particular you want to ask us, let us know. And to be honest, that one question would probably turn into a whole episode.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, so I've been Josh.
And I've been James.
We're signing out for episode 5 for you. Drums and a bit of bass.
And yeah,
we'll see you in the next episode, which we don't know when it will be, because we're moving house basically. So we're going to be, it may be a bit more than a month, but we'll be back in a new location.
Exactly.
Ooh, exciting.
Yes.
Looking forward to it. So until then, take it easy, and we're out of here. Big thanks to Ram as always for letting us invade their YouTube channel, and new music coming soon.
Great. Thank you everyone, and take care.